what would you say to someone who feels like they're a writer, but isn't quite sure about this journey of being a writer, isn't quite sure about getting up on stage and performing, is a little bit scared, you know? Let's say you're speaking to Daisy before you started writing and performing.
Oh my God.
What would you say to her?
Oh my God, what would I say? Okay, I'm really going to channel.
Yes.
I'm going to channel little old university Daisy. I would say, know that you are worthy just as anybody else. And know that the people that you admire, they also started out just as a person. Started out as person. They obviously were people. But the people that you admire, you see the end result, right? You pick up their collection of poetry. You pick up their novel. Like, you have not known what the life that they led was like to get them to this place, and how nobody picks up a pen and just churns out fucking Shakespearean sonnets. Like, you have to go through the grueling process of learning phonics, learning grammar, learning how to spell. It's baby steps. Every single day is baby steps. So as long as you are taking those baby steps, and maybe that first open mic, you do get too overwhelmed and you cannot perform, that's okay. Go next week, try again. And you fumble, that's okay. Like, you will still be 3 years ahead, and you will still be fumbling on your lines, and that is fine. And the audience claps anyway, and they love it. You know, they feel what you want to share. And think about what gets you out of bed, you know? I can't remember who said it, but there's that quote which is like, the meaning of life, quite literally, is what stops you from killing yourself this very moment.
Yeah.
And when life gets you down, when you've been beaten about and thrown around by your day, like, what do you do? What brings you peace? What brings you joy? Or what even brings you catharsis, you know, to just or cry or whatever, you know? And for me, that's writing. For somebody else, it might be basketball. I don't know. And that quite literally is the meaning of life, the meaning of you continuing. It doesn't have to be the meaning of your entire life. It can just be the meaning that is given to this next hour, that you're like, okay, I can continue. I can just about continue. And that is enough. I think that is enough. So yes, we veer off track, but basically what I want to say is, get up there, read your poem, keep writing, and you will one day have this realization that all along you were a writer. And that is a crazy realization.
Daisy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jeoffrey.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm having my tea. I'm feeling good. I'm very happy that you're here. I'm very happy for this conversation. It's a conversation that, speaking to you, you know, like, I know that we've been speaking quite a bit about what we're going to try to speak about here, but speaking to you got me really excited because I love writing. I love writers. I love speaking to writers. It's one of my favorite things to do. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this conversation today.
I'm looking forward to it too. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Excited.
So let's get straight into it. Like, I always try to give people a little bit of a background about what we're speaking about today. And so, yeah, for me, it's about writing. Writing has such an interesting, impactful kind of influence in my life ever since I was young. It's been a way for me to express. It's been a way for me to kind of like get my thoughts out and like kind of get hold of them, you know, and kind of understand them a bit more as I do that. That process of doing really has been integral for me. But what is it like for you? What does writing mean to you? Not just kind of like as a profession, but also as like a emotional thing. How does writing show up for you emotionally?
It definitely feels like an emotional hygiene practice. Now that sounds a little bit sanitized, but really it is so healing. It really balances me in a way that I almost come to the page and I'm not sure what I have to get out. But as I am writing and I saw this amazing quote, and it was about journaling and how you're pulling this thread and you don't know where it's going to take you, but you pull it and pull it and pull it. And it's a thread that unravels what you needed to unravel, you know? And so I'm sure a lot of artists can relate to that feeling of being in this like almost manic haze, and you just have to like get to the page, you have to get to the canvas, you have to da-da-da-da-da-da. Almost like you are so in the flow that your hands are moving without you even consciously doing it. And you're writing and writing and you're like, oh, I am realizing this and this, and I'm seeing it in a different perspective. And I journal a lot. I really love journaling. Sometimes with prompts, sometimes just free flow, stream of consciousness. You start off like, well, I haven't written my diary since last week. Why haven't I done that? And then you just, you let all of the random little bits and bobs come out, and you're like, and then I had a coffee with this person, and then I saw a dead fox, and that was sad. And somehow your own mind will just take you to where you need to be. Like when you are honest and give yourself that space. And it is almost mysterious. Like I could be journaling and then I'm like, okay, I'm starting to rhyme and a poem's coming out. And other times I'm very like intentional, like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I have this poem idea and I want to tackle it. And perhaps there's very different modes of writing which are so applicable in different ways that it's so hard for me to say like, what does writing as one thing mean to me? Because it feels like it's this act of putting pen to paper and writing it down is the external manifestation of internal processes, and those internal processes can vary so wildly depending on what I'm needing that day. Do I just need to vent? Do I need to write a fuck you letter to somebody that I'm like, okay, it's out, it's there, and I can see them at the next event and I can boom, poise. It's okay, everything's calm, you know? Or do I need to just escape and write something that is completely fictional and fantasy and dissolve into that? Or do I need to face what is real and ask myself, okay, what are you really feeling? What are you really afraid of? Girl, what are you really afraid of?
I love that. I love that. And I love you had the phrase of external manifestation of internal process is so true. I think that's what makes writing, I think even since we first begun doing it, all the way back in the day of capturing words, you know, I think that's what makes it so like important, because it's that fair, as a human being, you don't, so much of your processes are kind of like acted out. So much of your thinking is acted out. You know, if you feel angry, you act angry, but you don't really take time to go internally to get to the root of it, to kind of like really put it apart. Like you were saying, the string, to see how long the string pulls. And I think you are right. You make a really good point that it comes in different forms. And so to look at it as, you know, as a general thing, maybe might be doing a disservice. So let's break it down to chunks and look at it from there. Okay. Let's start with journaling then.
Yes.
Journaling is such an interesting way of like, kind of like, you know, dealing with yourself, that process of talking to yourself as I found it. But talk to me about journaling. What role has journaling played in your life?
You know, it's such a shame because when I was a child, you know, perhaps this was like one of the first instances of my raging imposter syndrome occurring in my life, you know, but I tore up, I think I was about 11 or 12. I tore up all of my childhood diaries.
No way.
I was like, I was burning, I was raging, I felt so confused in this, you know, like just about to enter adolescence and all of these emotions and feeling like perhaps like a rage at my past self, a hatred, a wanting to erase what had happened, what I had written, and thinking that it wasn't worth anything, you know.
How long had you been writing for until that point? How many years?
I mean, I'd kept a diary like here and there as a kid, you know, like one of those, it has like a heart-shaped lock with a key.
Oh,
like,
wow, that's so cute.
Yeah. And but I feel like this is such a universal human need, you know? Like the other day I saw a little girl writing on the bus and she had drawn a giraffe and she just wrote, "This is a giraffe."
Fair
and
enough.
I was sitting behind and I was like, girl, that is a poem. like you can see the giraffe, but still we have that need to say, this is a giraffe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
To affirm it to ourselves as well as to others, to find a way of perspective that can be shared almost. Because whoa, I watched this reel, which was crazy. And it was like, try to look at a thing or look at a person and see it without using words, without thinking of words. And it made me think about the ways that language is this magnificent, marvelous tool for us to conceptualize and be able to see this information and manipulate it and add it and subtract it and move it around. But at the same time, how is this word itself limiting? Or like, I mean, you could say all words are labels, right? And then we are constantly pushing against these labels, these identities. Like how can this be a table, but also comes from a tree? But at what point does the tree stop becoming a tree and becomes a table? And if a table has 4 legs and we take away
It doesn't
the
become
leg,
a table anymore.
but then you have
Absolutely.
tables with 1 leg. You have tables which are circular, and you also have times tables.
Completely different thing.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting point there. And I want to linger on that point then, because you are right. And I think of this too. There's another quote that comes to mind when you say that. To me, it's like the limits of your language is the limits of your world. And I think that's so important, because it's like, it talks about like, oh, if you can't ascribe definitions to poetry or to peace or to love or to anything, these feelings, if you can't verbalize it, if you can't understand it through language, then you really can't understand it as an emotion or as a thing within themselves. And like, at what point, like you were saying, at what point does understanding these things manifest them and make them become it, you know? I also think that a lot of language is used to kind of understand ourselves, but I'm wondering for you if language does that initially. So when you do journal, is it a process of understanding yourself, or is it a process of just like, I need to get it out? Does it help you get over the emotion or whatever you're going through, or does it just help you state it, and then getting through it is like a process of just like time? How does that show up for you? How does language actually help you, or writing actually help you get through stuff?
It almost feels like magic, that every feeling, every action, every conversation, everything that we do in life can dissolve and disappear. And we have, like, think about how many thoughts we've had in our entire life. And how many thoughts do we remember? You know, like, it's about memory. It's about temporality. Like, recording your thoughts as you're sitting down to journal, and then rereading them and being like, wait, 15 minutes have passed and the world is kind of different now because I journaled. And it is that bizarre sense of being yourself, but also being able to have this step back from yourself to look at what you were. And God, like, perhaps there is something to be said about not being in the present moment and trying to hold on to the past and to make sense of it, perhaps. But then at the same time, that is so necessary in the present for me to look at the past and be like, okay, how do I want to move forward? You know, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes journaling doesn't work. And I do just have to go out and have a glass of wine and have a cry and have my good friends just be like, yeah, that was pretty shit. That person you dated or that job or this or that, you know, and it's how to take care of a human being. God, how to take care of a mind, a heart, a body, a soul. How to eat 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
How did my parents do this? Like at my age, like I think children would die if somebody handed me a baby like right now. I love babies. I'd read books. I'd educate myself. But like
you figure it out. You figure it out. I think that's kind of the process, right? Like
you rise to the
occasion. It's so funny when you're mentioning about like, because I think what you're describing is the process of being, but also writing helps that infuse that with being and becoming. I wrote a poem about that and I think it's so true. It's like both of them have to happen at the same time. I think writing is such an interesting way to do that because, you know, kind of coming a little bit into poetry, when I look at my poems, I'm surprised sometimes. I'm surprised almost all the time. Where did this come from? I don't exist in a world, or my language when I'm speaking to people isn't the same as my voice when I'm writing, you know?
Oh, I feel that. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
That is a part, like I have a line, it was like, I decided to rise to the, you know, to the language or to the voice in my poetry, you know, because it is that, because over time you start to see a different version of you, a more understanding, a more empathetic, a more like, you know, even to yourself, which is like such a different way of existing when you start like looking at yourself as this project, you know, as it's always also, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, as like you are not just a poem, you know, that I think that's what poets do so well. They treat themselves as a poet, as a poem. So it's like a process of ongoing change, and they don't judge any version of themselves, and they integrate all of it. I think that becomes an ongoing thing where you kind of have to get into that mode of, I think everyone can do this. I think writers just have the, I was going to say we have the courage, but I don't think it's courage. I think we just can't help it. They have to write it down. It's the impulse to write it down and to like share it and to like kind of have that relationship. And I think it's so important. I know you got something to say to that. So as a reply, but also as a next question to that is take us back a little bit. How did you get involved with writing? Want people to understand that this isn't just a thing that just comes together, you know. It's a process of like internally and then also externally. So what was that process like for you? How did your internal musings in your world start to have an external manifestation?
It was only really 3 years ago that I even began to claim this identity as a writer, as a poet. Before, I used to say, oh, I write a little bit, but I'm not a writer. You know, it's always the but. And you meet so many people and you catch them saying the same thing. And, you know, I always, in the smoking area and open mic, wherever, I'm always like, you are a writer.
Yes.
I'm like, you are a writer. And, you know, like, and it feels like such a community. Like there's this flow, this give and take. And I have been that person quite literally in the smoking area where somebody else, like a kind stranger, has just given me that little boom, that boost that I needed. And it is almost like this invisible forest, this invisible network of people that come to rise and support you. And I really think fundamentally art is about relationship to self, and it is, for me, an ongoing narrative of who am I, and also who do I want to become, and what am I discovering in myself. So isn't that bizarre? Like that we have this noun, writer, and then we have the action, the verb, like to write, writing. And I it was almost as if like, yes, I wrote before. I scribbled poems in school. I scribbled love poems. It's always love, right? Love starts you off like the first like wild rush of emotions and feeling and aliveness. But you know, like it was almost as if when I gave permission to myself to be a writer, I began to say things like, this is good literary material, and began to intentionally take myself to places to prioritize my writing, you know, rather than writing be, this is a pastime. This is what I do when I come back after school, after uni, or maybe I'm very overcome with feelings and I'm like scribbling it out. But it is a practice, I think, you know, and even in those moments when you're not creating and like sometimes you have a dry spell, you know, I don't want to say writer's block because I feel like this idea of like a block is not necessarily how I perceive it. I feel like it's almost like a fallow, you know, like they do it like fallow years, right? Like you have to just let the land rest in order for it to be able to bounce back and nourish again, you know? And I think we have to have that. We have to live life and you know, I think it comes part and parcel with this chase those A stars, like immigrant mindset, like be successful, be a good girl, be this, be that. And it got to a point where I was forcing myself to write when I didn't feel it. And I think that made me lose touch with the heart, the soul of it, which is why I write. And I think finding that balance for yourself of like, okay, I have to be intentional and committed, but there's a difference between forcing yourself to write when you're like, your body is asking for you to process and digest before you're ready to, you know, like it has to be in the womb, right? Before it's ready to come out. So for me, it's quite beautiful that it's unpredictable and it's not stable and doesn't comply with this like convenience culture and hustle culture, you know, because like I love writing. I work hard, but my definition of working hard does not mean, okay, I sit down and write from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. every day, you know, like mine is like, okay, perhaps I have 2 weeks of just living my life and I don't feel like I want to write. And then I do like 4 nights in a row of like manic pixie poet mode. You know, and that is just me. That is so personal to me. It is my practice. It is how I write, and and it's also evolving, you know, and evolves with different stages of your life.
You make so many good points. I didn't want to interrupt, but
no, yeah,
such a writer's mind.
There's so many points, wondering.
And I want to go back to some of them because I think some of them deserve some kind of like, I guess, like excavation. So the idea of like people not thinking of themselves as a writer and the people telling them, like usually other people telling them, no, you are a writer. Let's linger there. Why do you think that occurs for people, for writers? Why do you think writers need others to affirm them as writers before they can take that leap and say they're writers? What was it for you? What gives you permission? What gave you the permission to call yourself a writer?
I think it's a combination of things. I mean, this sense of community is so important in every aspect of our lives. Like we want to be appreciated. We want to feel as if we are doing good and we are contributing and helping other people and bringing joy. And it is a craft. It's not as easily definable what makes good writing or different, or writing that is different to what one audience would perceive as good. But it is it is something that you need to learn from people who have the skills that you don't have, so that when you have those skills, and then you can make informed artistic choices about, I'm going to use iambic pentameter in this way, or I'm going to use rhyme, or I'm not going to use rhyme, or I'm going to completely disregard all of this and do my freeform experimental mixed with binary code type shit. Wait, can I swear?
Of course, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's fine. Type shit. I love that.
Shit. And I think it's okay to be like, I do need other people to tell me that I'm good at things, you know? And that doesn't have to be everyone. Obviously, you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but to have somebody that you admire their writing, you admire the way that they think, to say like, hey, I felt that. Like, your poem resonated with me. That is data, you know? Not to be so crude about it, but there are these like micro affirmations in these things that build up, and like you're able to silence that inner critic, that imposter syndrome.
The doubt,
even,
yeah, absolutely.
Even a little bit, you know, because, and that is the real obstacle to art. That is what stops you from even putting the pen to the page, because, oh, it's not going to be good. Like, oh, I'll just read somebody else's because they'll put it in better words than me. No, they'll put it in amazing words, but there will be different words, and they will not be your words. So it is both within yourself but outside of yourself. Having that conviction that this is what I love to do, or this is even true to me. Like, you know, when I first started doing open mics, I was so terrified because these poems are like true in a way that I am not going about my daily life and having these conversations and recalling events as this person and oh my God, and can you believe they said this and then this happened. But true in the sense of like the deep feeling of it, you know, because it can be completely factually true and you can skim over all of everything that happened in terms of time and location and like people. You can give so much information without giving the feeling, right? And for me, that is what poetry gets at, a truth in feeling. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be, it can be completely fictional. It can be abstracted into a way that it's just flashing images and metaphors and I don't know, like images that might not make sense.
Absolutely.
But make the feeling that it leaves you with is like, that is, I don't think there's anything that makes more sense.
And that's what's so powerful about writing, especially I would say poetry, because it's that kind of stripped back vulnerability that you don't find anywhere else. Because people, you know, words cover very little of what we're trying to actually say. Sometimes we'll have a conversation, but you don't really say what you mean in society because it's deemed as proper, you know. But I feel like poetry strips that back. You don't have any gut. You don't have any. You can't say the thing without using the words that mean so much to you. It's almost by the form of it. If you're trying to say something that rhymes or something that has a flow to it, you look for the word that has the most closest to the feeling. You know, maybe the limit of the words that you have allows you to just get rid of all the chaff and it's just focused on, and then that will pull you in, and the form, and then you know you're sharing it with people. You're on stage, you're bare, it's just your voice. There's no one else. There's no backing track, nothing. It's just you in an audience. You create a space which is very unique. It's almost like it is very deeply tied to how, you know, I think human beings share as a group. You're kind of in this kind of, you know, you're in this kind of room where, you know, you're sharing and you're saying things and it's hitting everyone differently, and then you get that response back, you know, and then you can speak to people. But even when you speak to them afterwards, they're trying to get across how much your poem meant, but they can't use it with normal words. They say, I liked it, and you're like, I liked yours, but it's like we've lost something there immediately because what what got them was the feeling you were getting across. And that goes so deeply into, I think, what writing is. And I think you mentioned it before, is a relationship to self. It is that. It is a relationship to self, but I think it's a relationship to like the human self also. You know, it's like the collective unconscious. And I think it really plays a part in that. I feel like, I think affirming yourself as a writer, all it takes is just giving yourself the permission to have thoughts and take them seriously. You know, like I had this thing when I first started writing. It's like, if I had a thought and I could pull out my notes on my book and I write it down, it was important. And it was just that. It's like the act of getting on my phone, put my password and open my notes up. No matter if I thought a thought was important enough for me to put it down, I'm going to revisit it, because trusting that kind of like understanding that, like, whatever this line was or whatever this thing that may hit with me at that point, I can go back and be like, what was there about that line? And usually it's feelings that are subconscious. These words hit that subconscious, and then I'll have to now pull the thread. So I think it's that kind of like process. And I think the process of writing is different for everyone else, But I think, it's such an important thing just to kind of like find that belief in yourself, I think everyone can be a writer, but it's that belief in yourself, that vulnerability, that allowing that vulnerability to show up to people. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about the idea of be vulnerable through writing. How does that show up for you? Is that something that you've learned to do over time? Or is that something that, because you started writing early, was always easy for you?
No, it's not been easy, let's say. I'm still very much trying to practice vulnerability every day. You mentioned voice before, and I really love that sentence that you said about poets treat their life like a poem. Wait. It was that, right?
Yeah, it was that.
Poets treat their life as a poem, and you're
that?
editing and rearranging.
Damn.
Do you have a podcast?
I might be a poet after all.
You should.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes. No, you're good. And it made me think about, so when I write, I sign off as days, or sometimes just like my initial D. And it's strange because in life, I'm Daisy, or to family, I'm Yo, my Chinese name. But I do have some close friends who call me Days, like as a nickname. But really, for me, it feels as if Days is my writing identity. Almost. Have you watched Bridgerton?
No, I haven't.
Like Lady Whistledown. So she's the one writing these like scandalous pamphlets of gossip that circulate around the town, like anonymously. And oh God, I love Bridgerton. Can you tell? I'm trying to be like regal out here.
I don't even know what it is. I'll take your word for it.
It's a TV show. It's really cool.
Is it the one where they wear those kind of like costumes?
Yes, corsets, ball gowns, debutante balls.
Fair enough.
But I think the show like really reflects on the power of writing, and at a time when women were so inhibited in society, and to write, you even had to have like a male pen name. Like, let's think Acton Bell, George Eliot, so many of these, well, they almost had to be, these like upper class, well-educated English women that ended up like completely radicalizing and changing the literature at the time. And so this is almost as if like romance as something that was initially criticized as trivial and so feminized and but was this like how is gossip and drama and romance something that is so innately human and like flies off the shelves and you cannot deny it, like the money like speaks, like people want this, people are eating it up even if they're they're not openly announcing it, but they're like
people are drawn to that.
ravaging,
Yeah, exactly.
Wuthering
of course.
Heights, and
Of course, yeah.
yeah.
I feel like, sorry to interrupt. I feel I think this leads on to a good point. I think you're right. I feel like the introduction of Substack has been such an interesting introduction into the writing sphere, because it allows people to not just look at writing as like this thing that's published and informed. It's like, it's a way for me to feeling page. And I feel like that's really showing a different side to writing. It's almost like essays, but essays on like society and culture and like all these things. And
the rise of the personal essay. Yes.
Talk to me about one of the essay or kind of poster you make. One, it's called Falling in Love Terrifies Me. And there's a few that I want to go through today. And that was the first one. You mentioned romance and you mentioned love and that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the inspiration behind that.
This is so wild. I feel like I'm like, is this how people who go on podcasts feel? Like, they're like, oh, we prepared this of yours. I was like, wait, I wrote that? Oh my God. But yes, falling in love, I'm still terrified of it. Mm-hmm. And I fall in love probably very often. I wrote it about the second person that I think in my life I have ever fallen in love with deeply. And it was my second like official relationship. And it really felt like I felt frustrated with myself that I so desperately didn't want my experience of love to be defined by my first love, which there's a lot of complexity there. I'm both grateful for it, but also had to learn a lot. I'm sure you can relate. Mm-hmm. And just that feeling of like, I now see love in this way, and now my body is reeling and I'm not able to trust as I did so easily. And you can feel yourself closing up, you can feel yourself guarding and wanting to say this and no, I'm not going to say it, and wanting to do this nice thing and be like, no, I don't want to come off like too intense, too desperate. And I'm just not nonchalant. Like, come on, I am in love. Like, I'm such a lover girl. I will be there, like handwritten, like letters in like ink pen, and I've calligraphed it. Is that an adjective?
It is now.
Calligraphed it.
Calligraph doesn't have words. It doesn't have meaning
I did
anyway.
it in calligraph. Ooh, they have the meaning we give them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think I relate a lot. And the reason why I wanted to talk about that one, because I related a lot to it. And I think love is a terrifying thing. Not because of itself, I think because there's other people involved, which obviously you can't have love by itself. I think it's because it's about the vulnerability of it, I think. It's the aspect of like, this is me. This is me at my most, tender, but true, It's like tender and true. This is me at that moment. How am I being received by you in this moment? And it's like that, like putting your hand out and then not knowing, in a world where everyone says everyone else is so shallow and is so like guarded. In a world, other people are guarded because their experiences or like the society we live in, to do that is I think it's courageous, but it's also just a terrifying feeling, and like, but I believe that I'm also a lover boy. I'm also like because I believe to live tender and true is the best way to live. It's the only way to live. But once you become hardened, you miss so much about life, and it is frustrating. Like obviously, to have feelings and to try to let to kind of exist in that mode of like vulnerability. But I've also found that you become more of yourself if you do that, because you're circling around something that's true. Whatever that person showed you about yourself, if you accept that, it allows you to be more true, more yourself, and stave off the real terrifying thing about life, which is like shallowness and like just dead kind of like emotions. You don't want that. You want hard hitting feelings. You want that, you know what I mean?
It takes so much more strength to be vulnerable. It is completely untrue that to put yourself into a vulnerable position is embarrassing or weak. If anything, that is strong. That is literally the definition of strong. Because you are taking a risk. You are putting yourself into a situation that could hurt a lot. And that takes so much courage and strength to do that. Yeah. It's the other side is, like cowardice and safety. And of course, that's not in a way to say that we beat ourselves up for that, because we're all out here trying our best, right?
Honestly, and I think it's understandable why it's so scary. Like for me, right, and I think we're all in somewhat terrified. I'm terrified of love because of the breaking my routine. I think I'm such a big, I've got my life. I figured out my life. Okay, now I've taken a long time to figure out about what I want. But love throws all of that into chaos.
Yes,
where you're doing something else, but you're thinking about this thing, and this thing won't just go away. You're not in control anymore. I'm a big control. I like to be in control of my feelings and my emotion, because I like to show up in the world how I expect myself to show up, with love and kindness. But when something just derails your emotion like that, that's very difficult to handle. And so it's like there's that tension of like, not wanting to give up too much control. But I've learned that it's not about giving up control. It's like when you start loving someone, it's almost like I'm curious about you, like I'm deeply curious, but also I'm willing to figure out what a life may be with you in it, like what this life I've created may be with you in it, and it's like, okay, that's a different way of integrating that. Instead of saying, okay, like everything's going to get thrown out the window and I won't ever be myself again and I will lose autonomy and independence and all these things that we end up ascribing to that feeling of like, that feeling of just being scared is like so encompassing so much different things. At least that's what I found.
I like how you worded that. What does a life look like with you? How can... I see a dance floor. I see like the music is playing, we're dancing to the beat, but the way that I'm hearing the melody, I'm hearing the rhythm and how it translates into my body is going to be different to yours. And so when you have a partner and the music is still there and we're still both dancing to the music, but okay, now we're like finding ways to fit together and move together. And I have to be aware of what you're doing. You have to be aware of what I'm doing. And how do you do like this? I guess the dance floor is life then.
That's a great analogy, actually. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
And I feel you on the
tango, right?
Yeah, it does. And I so feel you on the letting go of control. I really think that some of the best things that have entered my life have come so spontaneously, so out, like seemingly out of nowhere, dropped out of the sky. And almost having this faith that you cannot predict the outcome of something. Like I can tell you that, okay, I'm going to go to Morocco bound and I'm going to get the train and it's going to go to London Bridge and I'm going to get off and then I'm going to go to Poetry and meet some people. But people, like I can think that I know what's going to happen, but okay, then who are you going to meet? What are you going to talk about? How are you going to feel? And now it's led me here and I'm on this podcast. And so it's almost as if we can be under this illusion that we can tell what's going to happen. And it almost feels as if like, it's such a, like that is like one bit of information in the like terabyte that you're going to get of what actually happens, right? Like, okay, I can predict that like I'm going to get there. I'm going to do this. And then that feels like control to me, right? But like, I was not in control of anything else. But
it's about opening up to it, right? Like, if you had just like completely shut me off and I said hello, then it wouldn't be here. You know, it's like an element of also, yes, putting yourself in that position, going out and experiencing, but putting yourself in a position where serendipitous things can happen. You know, if you, you know, I feel like that's a large part of what I've realized about
making your luck as well. Yeah.
You know, like a lot of the things, a lot of the people that I met recently is just literally me being in situations and being like, that person's interesting. I don't know why they're interesting. They might not be interesting. They might not. But again, I think everyone's interesting. So that's. But it's like, so I'm like, that person's interesting. I want to speak. I want to get to know this person. I want to speak to them. So then, first off, is like an acknowledgement of that, getting past the feeling of like they don't want to be interrupted, because I have evidence of people me thinking that and then not, you know, most people, if you present yourself in the right way, they will talk to you. And then following through and seeing it happen and seeing it blossom into friendships. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That means that I got to just trust the universe with these feelings. And so that there's the aspect of that, you know, that's part of like learning to trust that things will go well and then moving on that basis. Coming back to writing for a second.
Yes.
Talk to me about how writing has helped you become different versions of yourself. How does writing help you, I guess, let go of a version of yourself and also move into another version of yourself?
Writing is one of the ways that I play, you know? And I mean, in English, I think when you enter adulthood, like the verb play, it becomes like laced with sexual undertones. And, you know, it's interesting. In Chinese, even as an adult, you can ask your friends to come out and play.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like, 你要不要出来玩？一起玩? And a night out can be like, let's go play together.
Yeah.
Like in a completely platonic, non-sexual way.
Yeah.
And this concept of play, of fun, you know, of doing something purely for the joy of doing it. And, okay, being like, if I try something that I'm not used to writing, like I don't really tend to rhyme a lot, but there are times where I might do a poem that's a bit less, like not about heartbreaking, it's a bit more like comedic, you know, and then I'll rhyme and try this and da-dun, 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 da-dun. And that helps me realize that there are different ways that I can express myself. And I'm it's almost as if there are multiple voices in my head, you know, and you're feeding these different voices and letting them speak and putting them, maybe they're in my head and it's an open mic and they each get a turn at the mic. And I was like, next up we have comedian Daisy.
And you're clicking your fingers, everything she says.
Yeah, but then like occasionally corporate girly Daisy comes to the front. And it's like necessary, and you have all of these different versions of yourself in your head, these different voices. Although, how do some people not have internal monologues? I'm like,
that's crazy.
Is this real? Yeah. Are you catfishing me?
Yeah, no, because I don't understand. How do they speak to themselves? Then they don't speak to themselves. Then there's no understanding of self. You know what I mean? How do you have an understanding of who you are if you don't have that voice?
Yeah.
Is everything just external?
But like, if you, like when they pause to think, what's going on?
Just
like
silence. Just silence, I guess. That's just...
Or is it like visual? But then I feel like the way I think it is visual and...
Here's a question. Do you control the voice in your head? Like sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. Right? Yeah. Sometimes the words just pop up at you. And it's creating that noise in your head and you can't control it.
Yeah, louder than anything.
Louder than anything. So sometimes maybe that's what it is. Maybe they just can't control it. It's just a constant kind of like, I've always find it so fascinating how other people, like we'll come back to what we were talking before at the beginning, just like being, how they just like get through life. Like, you know, a large part of writing is also reading. You know, it's like I've gorged so much books and stuff that just kind of like change my perspective on life and just my perspective of myself mostly, because it just really does provide a mirror. What are some books for you that have had a big influence on your on your writing, but also on who you are as a person?
Oof. Damn. Well, one of my favorite authors is Ken Liu. He writes sci-fi, short stories and novels in the genre of silk punk. So
Wow.
have you heard of, you know steampunk?
Yes.
So this industrial age, Victorian steam engine, like pipes, things like this, cogs, mechanisms. So silk punk is, think like ancient Chinese, like herbal medicine or like sorcery or martial arts. Like this, it's so interesting how like history is reinterpreted into aesthetics and these new art movements, and we are commenting on the present by dabbling in bits of the past that we want to thread together and remake. And it's, oh God, I'm just obsessed with Ken Liu. I just think he's just my intellectual crush, like through and through.
What's about, like, what's some of the books, what's some of the themes? You mentioned looking at the past through the present. What else has he taught you? As a writer, but also as like a person?
I think him along with Toni Morrison, they do stories that feel as if they are imagined histories, you know? Like the Chinese immigrants that went over to America in the gold rush, and how there was so much resentment from the other like Eurocentric immigrants that had went over, and there was this entire like xenophobia, like paranoia against the Chinaman, and how they like tunneled like relentlessly into these gold mines. And this imagining of like, okay, a father and daughter, and they have a farm, but next to them is like a house of these like Chinese miners. Okay. And the friendship that blossoms between the daughter and one of the miners, and how he introduces her to like stir-fried vegetables with garlic and chili, and then she's like, what is this? She's like, this is crazy. And the whole village is like, wait a minute, that smells like kind of good. Like, we're not meant to talk to the Chinaman, but like I like kind of want to have a taste, you know? And it's this wonderful, wholesome story of like the power of food even to connect people. And like, and one of the miners, one of the Chinese miners, being like endlessly compassionate and just like welcoming people into his home, and how this love is the thing that melts through the racism, that connects people, you know? And it's so fun to think of like history as all of these individuals that lived in a town that had meals, that had to have cups of tea and bowls of food, and it's completely, and it can be fiction, right? But it is this like imagined history with interwoven with like historical fact. That is like how did that daughter who had only had like cheese and bread and like pork for her life like feel when she ate that first bite of like honey ginger aubergine? Like how did she feel?
Yeah.
Like
her brain couldn't compute.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And I think I love stories like that. I love kind of like, I think he did a really good job explaining it. That kind of like a peek into history, like a alternative history, but you keep the humans still the same. I think I love when sci-fi does that, when they take like human characters, put them in a whole new world, but you see the same kind of emotions sparkle, whether it's like curiosity or love or learning new cultures and like finding out. It's almost like you get to relive these moments. And same thing I love about art, same thing I love about like, you know, movies, you know, you see a different almost timeline. You know, you allow yourself to be in that character, especially if you're doing writer, because you're doing an internal monologue, you're going through the day, you are that character for that sense in that chapter, and you get to see how they relate to other people, and so you have your own feelings about how you would feel if you were in this, you know what I mean? So it's that kind of
like dual vision.
Vision of that, and that's so interesting as a way to make people empathetic. And I feel like, you know, one of my favorite writers, James Baldwin, does that a lot, where he has a really strong voice about his, you know, his kind of like environment and society, but, you know, just like you were saying, it kind of allows you to kind of also look at your society and your environment, how you relate to that, and it's such a fascinating way to communicate anything to people, you know. And I love that way of doing that. And I think over time, whenever I'm in a stressful mode where I kind of like feel like the world doesn't make sense, I find myself going back to my favorite books, almost like old friends, you know, where you're like, oh, like I've not talked to you for a long time. You read the book and it's like really kind of, you learn new things. You learn a lot about your past self, you know. I have this book.
Yeah, you do learn. It is like you're continuing that dialogue with your past self. Oh, I like that. Yeah. Yes. No,
I was going to say, I have a book where I write down the dates when I read it on the front. I know you're not supposed to touch books, but...
says who?
I do what I want.
Says who?
But so I write down the dates.
Scribble in your books, annotate them, rip them up, take a page and give it to a friend.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Who said we can't write in our books?
Rip them up is insane.
Unless it's a library book, let's be respectful.
Yes.
Please don't give me a library book with like a chocolate stain on it.
Like ripped out pages. No, you have to go find it. You have to go find the rest of the story. But no, I have the reason why it's interesting to me is that when I open a book and I read, I'm like, oh, the last time I read this was 20th of Jan 2023. What was I doing back then? Oh fuck, I was like living here. I was doing this thing. I'm in a completely different space. Yeah. And I read it again and I annotate different things. And like different things will point out to me. And it just, that growth is just fascinating to me. You know, I think it's all, you know, that book, in that book, you know, especially it's like a times capsule of my psyche or my growth or identity. Final question, or one of the questions I wanted to ask you before we close definitely was, in this process, and I think what I've been able to find through reading some of your Substack and meeting and speaking to you is the growth. And I think you mentioned it to me too, where it's like you're on this journey and this creative journey. And I think anytime anyone goes on a creative journey, you find a lot about yourself. But it's also, to me, it's a journey towards being at peace with yourself. And it's like that kind of process. Talk to me about that. What has this journey showed you? And if it is the same as I'm saying, where it's moving towards peace with yourself, how is that? How is that going? How's the journey towards peace?
Oof, big question. Big question. I'm realizing that we are all a bit insane, you know? And I'm leaning into this insanity. And there are moments where I'm a bit terrified of what this insanity means. And the voices in my head and this, it feels as if a portal has been ripped open through art, through finally letting things flow out and letting the truth see light. It is strange to think how I feel like, for me, energy is not a resource that is linear. Or for me, it doesn't feel as if I have a battery and the battery is tick, 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 tick going down. I mean, of course, physically, like, I'm not going to survive on just like 2 biscuits and a matcha, you know, like for the rest of the day. But I think writing and my creative practice has been connecting me to that abundance of energy that we all had as children, you know, like this verve for life, this like You can run around, you can play. You can literally, you play until you like physically collapse, until your spirit and your body are like, wait a minute, we can't keep up. You need a nap. And then you have a cry and you have a nap. And then it passes. And then you can play again, you know? And so I feel like there are so many, it's almost as if there's this narrative in my head of like, oh, I'm so tired, or like, oh, I feel lazy, or oh, I can do that later. I don't want to do that. I can procrastinate it. But when energy is flowing, or when I get myself into a place where I feel like I'm on like a different plane, you know, I really do think that open mics are like this. Like we are communicating on a different plane when we are up there reading our poems. And it's like, I just find energy there, you know, like I find, so it's almost magical, some power that I didn't realize was there. And okay, so that was I feel like I've gone on a whole tangent, but I also want to say that I think my creative practice and writing it's been me facing my fear in a lot of ways, and I've been realizing that there are obviously moments when you feel fearless and you just fuck it, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna read my poem, like but the fear being there doesn't mean I have to act on it. Doesn't mean I have to listen to it. I'll listen to the other Daisy, the poet Daisy in my head on the stage, you know, and showing up for yourself and doing that and making it into a practice, spiritual practice, emotional practice, a communal practice, you know, like me. I begin to realize that doing the things I'm afraid of 99.9% of the time doesn't lead to the catastrophic consequences that I had already mapped out in my head in vivid detail with we are just constantly writing these scripts and dialogues and building characters of people. And they're not those people. Like they are never as horrible as we think they are. Like we are preparing ourselves for the worst in so many ways, and it never is like that.
Yeah, I feel like that. It's a maladaptation in human beings. I feel like it's something that we learned previously, and we just can't get past that because we always have that fear of like, you know, I mean, it makes sense. You know, those are the people that survived. Those people who always doubted and didn't trust everyone. Then, you know, they survived, and so our ancestors have become that. But we don't live, I believe, we don't live in that kind of society anymore. Not to say that the society we live in is good. You know, there's so much stuff going on. But I think generally, human to human beings, connections, there's more of us that are similar, and more of us that are on the same page about our values than the small group of people who just try to control us and make us think that we're all divisive. I feel like a lot of the ways that we kind of understand each other is through words, is through the language, is through writing, it's through community, like you said. You know, seeing people at the poetry open mics is always, you know, warms my heart, because it's like out there you just ignore each other. Out there you're on the same train but you don't even speak to each other. But here the walls are completely broken. I'm talking to you about my deepest, why I wrote that poem, and you know, it was, you know, I was in this moment of complete vulnerability to a stranger, and then they received that with like grace and just like, oh, I see you, and it's like, okay, that's okay. Like nothing happened. Like I didn't burst into flames by being seen. That's okay, you know. And then you kind of feel that comfortability to do that. And I always say, the more you do it, the more you become yourself, until you get to a stage where, you know, it's like a process of self-actualization, you know. And I think it's super beautiful when you see that. Honestly, super beautiful. And I would encourage more people to do that. Yes. And on that topic, then, what would you say to someone who feels like they're a writer, but isn't quite sure. Isn't quite sure about this journey of being a writer. Isn't quite sure about getting up on stage and performing. Is a little bit scared, you know. Let's say you're speaking to Daisy before you started writing and performing.
Oh my God.
What would you say to her?
Oh my God, what would I say? Okay, I'm really going to channel.
Yes.
I'm going to channel little old university Daisy. She had blue hair, actually. Fun fact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would say, know that, should I say it to the camera? I would say, know that you are worthy just as anybody else. And know that the people that you admire, they also started out just as a person. Started out as a person. They obviously were people. But the people that you admire, you see the end result, right? You pick up their collection of poetry, you pick up their novel. Like, you have not known what the life that they led was like to get them to this place, and how nobody picks up a pen and just churns out fucking Shakespearean sonnets. Like, you have to go through the grueling process of learning phonics, learning grammar, learning how to spell. It's baby steps. Every single day is baby steps. So as long as you are taking those baby steps, and maybe that first open mic, you do get too overwhelmed and you cannot perform, that's okay. Go next week, try again. And you fumble, that's okay. Like, you will still be 3 years ahead, and you will still be fumbling on your lines, and that is fine. And the audience claps anyway, and they love it. You know, they feel what you want to share. And think about what gets you out of bed, you know? I can't remember who said it, but there's that quote which is like, the meaning of life, quite literally, is what stops you from killing yourself this very moment.
Yeah.
And when life gets you down, when you've been beaten about and thrown around by your day, like, what do you do? What brings you peace? What brings you joy? Or what even brings you catharsis, you know, to just or cry or whatever, you know? And for me, that's writing. For somebody else, it might be basketball. I don't know. And that quite literally is the meaning of life, the meaning of you continuing. It doesn't have to be the meaning of your entire life. It can just be the meaning that is given to this next hour, that you're like, okay, I can continue. I can just about continue. And that is enough. I think that is enough. So yes, we veer off track, but basically what I want to say is, get up there, read your poem, keep writing, and you will one day have this realization that all along you were a writer. And that is a crazy realization.
It's the truth. I think it's the truth. I think there is so much. There's so much of that journey that needs to be discovered yourself. You know, like, we can say all the things, and I always say to people, find out yourself. I can't verbalize what that journey will be like for you. I can only tell you what the feeling might be when you reach here. So yeah, find out. It's the mystery that's actually really interesting. The mystery of the people you meet along the way, the conversations you have, the words you discover about yourself on the page, and go, whoa, I said this? I wrote this? Yes, that's all part of it. And so, like, yeah, and honestly, Daisy, you're an incredible, like, writer. Like, I love reading your work. Honestly, it always makes me feel something, and I think that's like element of what good writing is. Also, I love seeing you perform. So, like, every time I see you up there and you're performing, I'm just happy because I know that I'm enjoying it, the audience is enjoying it, and you're sharing a part of you which we're all kind of tapping into, kind of what I said before, that kind of like, you know, that cathartic feeling. You represent that for all of us, and it's been a pleasure sitting with you today and speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And honestly, I feel like you have given me so much through this conversation, through probing probing parts of myself, which I maybe didn't even know. Yeah, so thank you so much. And thank you for hosting this and also poetry in general.
Of course.
Thank you for making that space, making a world, a pocket of the world where we can be honest and we can be vulnerable and we can speak to people that, like, because we're in the same room, we're going to speak to each other. Just connect. That's what it's about. Thank you for facilitating and
it's my pleasure.
Yeah, and speaking with me. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching. Until next time. Peace.